Next week, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South America, and others meet again. But this time, it's not just about trade deals and photo ops, because behind closed doors, there are whispers which are louder than ever. The new financial system is being built, one based on commodities, on strategic control, and critically, gold. There are credible rumours of a new BRICS settlement currency, one that might be backed at least in part by physical bullion. Now, we have heard this kind of talk before, but what makes this moment different is that the world outside the summit room is starting to look ready for it. Central banks are buying gold like it is going out of fashion. Germany and Italy are being pushed to bring hundreds of billions in gold reserves back from the US. And according to the European Central Bank, gold has now overtaken the euro as the world's second most held reserve asset, right behind the US dollar. Something is happening. This isn't gold as a hedge. Instead, this is gold as a foundation, as the default, as a system. So we're going to take a look at what's really going on and why gold is just apparently suddenly being treated like a serious asset again. As we know, the global financial system today is built on trust in a very specific structure, that the US dollar is dominant, that US treasuries are safe, and that the institutions holding all of this together, the IMF, the Fed, the World Bank, SWIFT, will operate above politics. But as we all know, that story is very much fraying. Since 2022, when the US froze Russia's central bank reserves overnight, the financial world quietly panicked. And not because anyone was necessarily supporting Moscow, but because it revealed a very stark truth. Your reserves are only yours if Washington says so. And that changed the game. Because suddenly central banks from the global south and even within Europe started asking a very uncomfortable question. Can we trust the system to work when politics goes sideways? And if the answer is maybe not, then you don't just tweak your portfolio, you build a fallback, you reduce exposure, you seek neutrality and enter gold. Because gold does not require permission. It doesn't run through the clearinghouses. It doesn't rely on counterparties. Because, as I say time and time again, it just is. It just simply exists. And in a world where systems are increasingly weaponized, that simplicity to gold is its power. And this is where the BRICS come in. Because next week, their summit is expected to focus heavily on trade settlement and currency realignment. And while no one is expecting a full gold-backed currency to emerge immediately, or perhaps even not at all, the building blocks for a gold-based system are clearly being laid. Now, last year saw the formal launch of the BRICS Pay initiative, which is essentially an effort to bypass SWIFT and allow the bilateral settlement in local currencies. But this system still faces trust issues and it needs a neutral anchor. This is something that can't be inflated, sanctioned, or politically manipulated. Gold fits that role perfectly. Russia and China already use gold to settle some energy transactions. India and the UAE very recently completed oil trades settled in rupees with gold used for balancing. And the interest in gold is not just technical, it is strategic. Because for the BRICS countries, gold provides something that no fiat currency can: insulation. Insulation from the US legal system, from this dollar-based leverage, or from sanctions that can turn off your banking system overnight. This isn't about returning to a gold standard in the 20th century sense. Instead, it's about building an alternative foundation. They are looking for a system where value does not have to be rooted through Washington, where clearing doesn't depend on New York, where trust is not the liability, but it is an asset. And of course, gold is the only thing that currently fits that bill. Now, just contrast that for a second with the West. Now, the European Central Bank very recently published data that shows that gold has overtaken the euro as the second largest global reserve asset. And as we all know, central banks added well over 1,000 tons of gold last year alone. This total is now nearing the all-time highs that we last saw in the Bretton Woods era. This is a monumental shift. It's the result of 3 straight years of buying, not because of price speculation, but by there is a fundamental loss in the confidence in dollar stability. If gold is now making up 20% of global reserves compared to just 16% of the euros, well, none of this is being done quietly. Whether it's India, China, Turkey, Poland, even Nigeria, they are all moving gold back from London and New York. When even the most mainstream institutions start endorsing gold as a strategic reserve, not the hedge, not the relic, well, you know that something is changing. These countries and these central banks, they are not preparing for volatility. Instead, they are preparing for a major change. And gold is the firebreak here. So let's just look at Europe's gold, specifically the portion which is stored abroad. Germany and Italy collectively hold the second and third largest national gold reserves in the world, reportedly. But more than a third of that gold is still sitting in New York under the stewardship of the Federal Reserve. Now, historically, this obviously made sense. The US was the dominant financial hub, and the Fed was the trusted counterparty. And Europe was in a decades-long honeymoon with US power. But of course, that trust is now being eroded. It's being questioned. Trump has publicly questioned the Fed's independence. He's mused about forcing something if monetary policy doesn't go his way. And many fear that under a second Trump term, if possible, those vaults could shift from safe haven to pressure point. Italian and German politicians from across the spectrum are now calling for repatriation, not as a snub, but as a safeguard. Because, as one German MP put it, legal ownership only matters if you have physical control, especially when systems break down. And this is not just about political theatre. The Taxpayers Alliance of Europe has very formally called on both governments to end their reliance on the US custodians. The Bundesbank, meanwhile, is reviewing its storage policy. So this is not about sentiment. This is very clearly about sovereignty being reclaimed. And that message is very much starting to resonate far beyond Europe. Yet for all of this institutional movement, retail investors remain largely indifferent. Gold demand among individuals in developed companies is still somewhat subdued. And why is that? Well, decades of financial orthodoxy have taught investors to ignore gold. It yields nothing, it's cumbersome. It does not fit this digital age. But perhaps more importantly, people still want to believe that the system works. As long as that belief holds, gold, they believe, is unnecessary. But when confidence falters, gold's role will change for them, from investment to insurance. And at that point, price will become secondary and safety is paramount. By the time that crowd moves, very often people will believe it's too late to buy meaningfully. So if you step back, the message is pretty clear. We are not worried here about a gold bull market. We are seeing a very clear gold signal because it signals the breakdown of old certainties, the permanence of the dollar, the reliability of central banks, the idea that reserves are just numbers on a screen. We are seeing a very slow signal to a visible fragmentation of global monetary order and the return of physical assets as the ultimate trustworthy backstop. The BRICS summit may not deliver a new currency overnight or if ever, but it could mark the moment when parallel systems move from theory to practice. And when that happens, gold status will change from fallback to foundation. For decades, gold has been dismissed as a relic, irrelevant in a world of fiat money and digital finance. But the world is changing. That trust that underpinned the post-war order is fracturing between nations, institutions, and citizens. And when trust dies, systems die with it. Gold doesn't solve that problem, but it does endure, and it may well be the solution. Today, it is not about the price of gold that matters the most. It's what that price is telling us about the future. Because while the world watches the BRICS summit for the headlines, the real story is likely to be unfolding in the vaults. And the message for those listening is unmistakable. And if you're one of the ones who are listening and you want to know how you can prepare your portfolio for this upcoming change, why not click on one of our new guides, the links below.